Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea with TPS, informal conversations with thought leaders in India and abroad. Today, we have a distinguished, eminent, and celebrated journalist, M.G. Radhakrishnan, who has been in this field for more than 40 years, in English and in Malayalam. He has been associate editor of India Today. Earlier, he was also in Mathrubhumi. Then later, he became the editor of Asianet News. And today, he is the group editorial advisor to Asianet News Network. Until recently, he was the chief of Asianet News. I have known him ever since I returned to Trivandrum, first as a India Today's distinguished representative. Then later, I started inviting me as a guest to my show called Videsha Vicharam on Asianet News. And later, soon after, he became my boss by becoming the editor of Asianet News. But he was a great editor because he never edited me too much. He gave me a free hand to run my show. And I also remember with gratitude how he celebrated the 600th episode of Asianet News a couple of years ago. And another interesting conversation I remember, and the fact is that when Mr. Shashi Tharoor wanted to enter politics and to contest for the constituency, Trivandrum constituency, the two people he consulted together were MGR and myself. I don't know how he chose both of us together. Both of us have different backgrounds, different ideologies, different thinking, etc., etc. But we agreed on that day that he would be a welcome addition to Indian politics and Kerala politics, and the rest is history. Welcome, MGR, to this episode of Tea with TPS.
Thank you, TPS. It's always an honor to be on your show. You've been kind enough to invite me to all your earlier programs, right from Videsha Vicharam, and even me mentioned in your book. You've been always kind to me. Thank you.
Good. I was a bit nervous about interviewing a master interviewer, but I thought I'll make it as a friendly conversation rather than an interview as such. So let me ask you first what your current responsibilities are. Many people are asking me this question. We don't see you on Asianet. We don't hear you. But obviously, you are doing a major supporting role to Asianet News. How do you describe it?
Well, TPS, as you mentioned, I was the editor of the channel Asianet News until the last...
Since 2014, right?
Yeah, from 2014 onwards up to last July last year. And from then on, I sort of changed my role a little bit because I have, kept away from the daily activities and the of the channel, and I have taken up this new role as an advisor. It is a semi-retired kind of position. At the same time, doing certain things which are supposed to be the future of news television, like concentrate.
So kind of margadarshak, right?
Margadarshak, as you know, it's actually a kicking up job. Position. What happened, Narendra Modi has shown us how to, take care of old people. Maybe that, but at the same time, I think I'm being useful to the channel and to myself also, doing certain things, but not in the the daily bustle of daily television channel, but doing certain things which could be sort of the future of news television, because here, after the social media sort of total invasion, the news channels as such have been going through a very difficult patch. This is a race for not just eyeballs, but at least it's going to be very tough because first it was the news channels actually replaced, as you know, the newspapers. Now this is the turn of news channels to be on the lookout as to how to sort of survive in this in this great race. So how to sort of the buzzword is confluence. Everybody is trying to sort of hold hands together. So, how to take certain good things from the social media, how to be complementary to the digital, and survive. So, this is something that we are concentrating right now. Certain concepts have been put into trial, and it's not yet been rolled out, but it is in the process now.
And so you are covering not only Asianet News, but also the whole range of Asianet network activities in other languages. So, right.
Yeah, but basically the kind of things that we are trying to put together will be language agnostic, as it were, because we will be, certain stories or certain visual kind of narratives, which will not be confined to just one language, but will be easily usable in all languages without much of an effort. Like there's some kind of a tweaking would be necessary, but at the same time, it will be possible. So these are the kind of things that we have to, because explore now, because market is getting tougher. So we are exploring the new frontiers.
Well, you already answered the question I was about to ask you about the changes in the media in general. My son, as you know, who is a dedicated journalist, used to say that a meeting of print journalists in India still look like a celebration, while in the United States, it looks like a funeral because they are so conscious of the fact that they are a disappearing species and others are taking over. But why is it that in India, print journalism is still effective, not only effective, considered more credible? Because what you hear in the news the previous night, you'd like look for it in the newspapers to see whether it was really true. So there is a certain amount of credibility that the print journalism still retains in India. Is it because we have less connectivity, the social media, the other media, the electronic media is not as developed as in the West? Why do you think that we are still attached to the print media to a certain extent?
Well, I always used to quote your son, actually, Srinivasan, when he, some time back, he gave a lecture in Kerala, Trivandrum Press Club. He said he's actually, talking about newspapers in the West. He's talking about it's like a funeral talk. So it is almost you're talking about something which is already past, which is already dead. So, but as you know, as you have also mentioned, that India is one of these very few countries in the world where the print media is still holding fort for various reasons. But I don't know whether it is mainly because of the credibility factor. It could be also to some extent, but because of the kind of economy that India has. India is still the literacy percentage, for instance, India still has about 50%. People are illiterate here. So as literacy progresses, or as more and more people are coming into the realm of literacy, the so-called neo-literates, they always go for newspapers and print and the written word as such. So India is one of those countries where, but I think that also is actually, it's a very temporary phenomenon, because the writing on the wall is very clear that the print is over, even in India, in terms of advertisement revenue, or in terms of, as an agenda setting role, or even the, simple things like, the newspaper, the kind of importance being attached to print journalism, or what is coming on a newspaper, etc., has gone down like anything. Because we used to say that some time back in Delhi, if you have a press conference by a minister, the minister will wait until the Hindustan Times guy or the Times of India reporter comes. But today they don't care a damn for these print reporters. They just wait for all the cameras to come. Unless one camera comes, the guy who is actually holding the press conference will not even open his mouth. And even in terms of agenda setting, what is happening in Kerala also, because what is being discussed or what is being The discourse is being built around what is being shown on television channels, what is being discussed on the television, debates, the kind of whatever bad thing you can call about the television, the shrill debates of the evening, in the news hour debates. This agenda is being set on, by those discussions and debates, and no more by the newspapers. In fact, the newspapers have been forced to follow what the television channel, says, or what the television channel discusses. So, in all respects, even though it looks like the print media is still holding fort, it is coming down in terms of revenue. It is coming down in terms of importance, even in India, even in Kerala. And the credibility factor, as you said, credibility is actually very important. But we are living in times where the people actually don't attach that much importance to credibility as we used to do some time back. People. This is the time called the post-truth time or the fake news time. The people don't attach that. I mean, it's quite a surprising, or it's a very depressing kind of thought. But the importance of credibility is not as much as it was in the past right now. You can see watching television.
The thought is that every news is welcome and they make their own judgments. Maybe they don't go by a particular view expressed by a particular newspaper. But does it also mean that there is a generation shift taking place? Because most of these youngsters who report are not very much under control or direction of an editor. Most of the time, they are just picking up from the streets and broadcasting it. And as a result, the control of the media is shifting from senior editors sitting inside the room and racking their brains as to what should be put out. They already put it out. They don't check each time with you or anyone else before say, can I say this? They just say it.
Right.
So
exactly.
I see that there is that change taking place. And, Asianet itself, it's the youngsters who seem to push the news in a particular direction. That is a welcome.
Exactly. That is, to a large extent, it is welcome because it is just the sign of times. But at the same time, as you said, this is something which is not, when in the print media, as everybody knows, that there is a lot of steps where you have the gatekeeping, where whether it is verified, I mean, it's cross-checked, it is actually going through a number of gatekeepers. Like you have the sub-editor, you have the chief sub-editor, then even somebody moved for that. But that was possible because it was a newspaper. You had all the time in the world to go through those things. You could check. But this is the now generation. This is the me generation. It's news breaking all the time. Whether if you are going to hold it for 1 second, the other channel will come out with it. So whether it is right or wrong or truth or lie is secondary.
Must break the news. Must break the news.
Yeah, let's first break the news, and if it is wrong, let's correct it later. So this is actually, I am not saying it's a good thing completely, but at the same time, this is the way things have gone. So I wouldn't blame somebody, but at the same time, things have changed radically.
So, but that difference you can see also between, say, Doordarshan and private channels, don't you? Because in Doordarshan, you can see that they are more restrained because they have somebody watching on them, while private channels do not seem to have that compulsion. And that may be a factor also. And of course, the other side is many of our young editors, reporters, etc. They go for the immediate reaction. They really have no time to verify it or go back to the issue, etc., etc. And therefore, very often the instant analysis catches on. And in-depth analysis, of course, maybe news hour time it comes, but by then the impression is generated. And therefore, sometimes we may be getting an impression which is not really true or not truly analyzed. But that's not, as you said, that's not what people are looking for. Because they'll do their own analysis and they're not bothered about what's happening.
Exactly. Exactly. That is why I said, it's instant journalism, like in anything, instant coffee or instant coffee. It's a typical instant journalism. What you need is what is there on that particular instant. You don't mind, you don't care about the depth, you don't care about the larger dimensions or the gray areas, nothing. Now you break it now, whatever it is. So that is the way journalism has gone. and for good or bad, but that is the rule everywhere. It's nothing to, I mean, it's not something that we are seeing in India or Kerala. It is global, and it doesn't mean that it is the best way forward, but that is the way mainstream journalism has gone. It's not that every newspaper or every television channel has gone into it, but in this race for eyeballs, it is these things. And as you said, another thing is that this is something which has actually shocked me, that at least some time back, to be fair, was the normal thing to be journalism. If you are biased, if you are prejudiced, if you are a very partial kind of stand on a particular news item, people would actually reject you. So that is why journalism enjoyed, in spite of all its control, the so-called controls by the management and by the proprietorial, by the market control itself, there was an independent zone. If you are biased, if you are prejudiced, you will be rejected by the market or by your reader. So, that is why the party newspapers, for instance, even if the party is so big in a particular state or a particular society, the channel it runs, the newspaper it runs, would not be the top, the top runners in the market, because everybody, even those people who are with the party or with that particular political organization, would not read their newspaper as a primary source of news. They would buy it maybe because of the loyalty of the party. But what has happened in the last 10, 15 years is that newspaper, even the free so-called private sector, newspapers or television channels which are run by private independent owners. Sometime back we used to sort of make fun of news Doordarshan or during emergency. It's all government. It's a government mouthpiece. Nobody takes Doordarshan news seriously, because everybody knows that this particular television channel is run by the government. It's only for the government point of view to be put forward. But now what you see is that even private newspapers or private television channels is dishing out only one particular political point of view, very openly, very rapidly, partisan news, or which supports a one particular religion. And the most unfortunate part is that it is these particular, they still enjoy the largest market share. So this has never happened before. In during emergency, as you said, Doordarshan or Akashvani maybe the top, but nobody took them seriously. Nobody read them. Nobody read them as or listened to them as a primary source of news. But now what you see is this is completely a complete turn of, it has turned completely the other way. To take the English channels, for instance, most of the English channels, the top run English channels, the top, rated English channels are very clearly partisan or very clearly pro one particular community. So, yet, that is why I said this is post truth. Everybody wants what they want to believe in. Not that this is the straight thing, this is the fact, but they want their own facts. As they say, the silos or the echo chambers kind of phenomenon. You can clearly see this has come into the world of media also. This has never happened before.
Is that what explains the existence of so many channels? Because no single person can see all. People just get stuck to one. That is how Asianet is on top. You know that more viewers for Asianet. Somebody else coming up, catching up, etc., etc. But who sees all this? And therefore, how are they surviving? Is it commercial interest or is it support of private sector? What makes it survive? I mean, nobody can see all the channels. Most probably two, nothing, not more than that. Entertainment channels. I'm talking about news channels in general. And then how do they survive? What interests are they serving? If people are already addicted to one channel or the other because of their faith or ideology or confidence in certain individuals, then how come all these channels seem to be doing well?
Well, it's actually they're not doing very well as it look, because if you take the news channels, you have about 8 to 9 or 10, 12 television top class top news channels, but except for the top 4 or 5, most of them are there because they're owners, maybe political parties or religious groups or religiously driven kind of party organization. They are being there to be present in the market. It is not fundamentally on the business business logic or the market logic that works there. Certain channels are there because you have your religion to, or your political party to, sort of publicize. So that is not the case with other television channels. If you look at the market, most of the 8 to 10 channels, except for the 3 or 4 which are not doing badly, all the rest belong to certain parties or certain religious organizations. They're not here to be it is not the economic logic that makes them survive. It is because they have to be there, so they have to put forward their religious or political point of view. So,
but they also seem to get commercials, advertisements, etc. They also carry.
Yeah, they carry advertisements, but the rates differ fundamentally, radically. The kind of money that an advertiser for the same advertisement to give to Asianet channel, Asianet news channel would be 300 to 400% more than what they pay for the same advertisement, which the fourth channel or the third channel or even the fifth channel. So the fifth and sixth channel will be showing that advertisement, but the kind of money they make out of it would be abysmally low compared to what Asianet News Channel makes from the same advertisement. So they just want to be there because they are showing advertisements. So they go to the advertiser saying that please give us the advertisements, but the money that you have to pay will be far less than what you pay for Malayalam Manorama or Madhubhumi or Asianet.
That will be less effective anyway. So
that is right. They know that they are not going to get any bias because this channel or this newspaper shows their advertisement.
No, but last 15 years that I have been in Trivandrum basically, I've been hearing about this channel, going away, dying off, that channel, but never happened. I didn't see any channel dying away in the last 15 years at least. And so there seems to be a certain amount of, shall we say, set followers for these channels, and they still keep them going. And now that the rating has come back, it has now become even more competitive, I presume.
Absolutely, because the rating advertisers go by the ratings alone, and that is the only yardstick in the market to depend upon. So that is going to make the. But again, there is this particular possibility that if those newspapers or those channels which don't come high on the ratings, you can give your advertisement for very low rates to these television channels. So there is nothing wrong for it because you have to please one particular political party, or if you have to please one religious groups, maybe a Christian group or an RSS group or a Muslim channel. So this advertiser actually or the company will be happy to please these people because they don't have to pay much for that. So that will continue for long. But in terms of actual the kind of revenue, they're struggling. In spite of the advertisements they show, they give an impression that they have also advertisement, that they are making kind of money. But these advertisements are mostly run almost free, next to free.
How about the government support in terms of advertisements?
Government support is very less.
Selective, or everybody gets a little bit?
Yeah, they are selective beyond. Generally, they are not too selective here in Kerala, for instance. You have heard. There are horror stories being heard from Delhi. Like if you are not going to give an advertisement, or if you are we are very critical of a particular government, especially the ruling party, you will be out completely. But that hasn't happened in Kerala because Kerala has that particular tradition of not being so sort of completely biased kind of thing from the governments. But here also, the advertisement revenue that comes from the government for a television channel is not much. Unless it is election time, you have sort of government sort of achievements to sort of tom about and all those things. Otherwise, generally, the advertisement that comes from government sector is very, very low. It is not important.
I had a friend, unfortunately, he passed away recently, who used to run a newspaper, daily newspaper in English and Malayalam. And every day I used to get it, I used to throw straight into the waste paper basket. So I kept asking him, why are you producing this? He said, Srini, I have to keep it going because then only I can survive. Because I have even if I make only 10 copies, it is essential for me to survive because that is enough. I don't want any subscribers. I don't want anybody to read.
Exactly. That is right. Because if you keep the cost very low, if you have only, if it is just to run your family or something like that, even a reasonable or small income from government would do. But a company or an organization like ours, or some, even lesser organization, like, if you have high costs, you have to maintain your staff, you maintain your technology, your equipment, all those things. For that, it forms a very small fraction. But if somebody, a person, as you mentioned, he doesn't sell newspapers, he has only 100 copies, he doesn't sell his newspapers. So all that he gets is revenue. He doesn't have anything to
So that is also possible. That's what I'm saying.
That is there, but not for television channels, because television channels, at least you have a minimum expenditure. You have to meet a minimum level of cost, because unlike the newspaper, a small newspaper, of course, you have to produce only 10 to 15 copies, and you can go to the government department and say that, this is my newspaper, give me my monthly quota of advertisement. But television, that is impossible. You have to at least, to be carried by, the channel, the companies which
distribution cables and so on.
The distribution kind of thing, that itself is quite costly, and it's been going up increasingly with every year. So you cannot play cheap in television industry. The government,
journalism is very much linked to democracy. So let us come to that topic. Now, as you know, the freedom index, the world, India has been downgraded. But the strange thing is, India is below some of the most restrictive societies, if you look at the freedom index. And even Sri Lanka is better than us, Pakistan is better than us. And so now there is this thing created in the West particularly, that India is partial democracy. And that obviously has an impact on journalism. Is it that you see the freedom index and talk about journalism, or is it journalism that drives the freedom index?
Well, it's a typical chicken and egg story, because which is first, which is second, nobody knows. But as you said, 150 among 180 countries, which is the worst ever record of India in independent India's history. So,
but is it fair? Is it fair?
It is fair, and it is. It's yes and no, because there are so many things which are involved. But absolutely, whether the government itself is compelling you to be pro-government, or you're sacrificing your democracy, is the only point that I'm not quite sure about. But if I've been to Ladakh, the North India, in the last 2 weeks back. You watch the Hindi television channels, and you would think that you are in China or North Korea. And the entire news channel, it's a private top news channel, like Aaj for instance, India, which is run by India Today. I was part of India Today. India Today is such a prestigious organization, but it's television channel, right from morning until night. The news channel, almost 60 to 70% of the news is actually taken up for news to project Narendra Modi or the central government. For instance, on that particular day, he was actually planning to go to Nepal for the Buddha Purnima thing. You will be stunned to see this kind of every news telecast, like in Aaj Tak, in half an hour, 15 minutes, we have a news bulletin, and every bullet as if there was nothing happening
in the world.
So
no Ukraine war. No Ukraine war.
This is actually, it's so embarrassing. And at the same time, I thought, it's something to be proud about Malayalam television channels or regional language television channels. In spite of all our problems, in spite of all our imperfections and warts, I would say a channel, a television channel or a news organization in Malayalam is much more independent, much more, critical of the powers to be
existing
than the national channels, the so-called national channels or the Hindi channels of televisions. So the point, as I'm trying to say, is that India, in spite of being the largest democracy, in spite of its long tradition of having a vibrant television, vibrant media, vibrant press and all, India seems to be slipping mainly on account of a voluntary sort of sacrificing of its own authority, its own powers to a large extent. There are stories, there are so many instances where editors have been pushed out from television channels, from newspaper organizations, at the under pressure from the central government. These are stories are there, but that would be only a small fraction. I wouldn't say that is a story of the mainstream Indian media. But why Indian media has become, in Delhi, it's called the Godi media. In being from the, it's kind of a completely voluntarily sort of, being a mouthpiece of a particular political party or a particular majoritarian religious organization. I don't know, but this has happened. I think so. At one side, you have the pressures, you have the threats, you have the threats of editors being shunted out, advertisements being withdrawn. But on the other side, there seems to be a voluntary sort of surrendering to to the powers that be in
No,
India.
but would it be fair to say that it is an elected government and they have more support generally?
Maybe
So,
that is also right. And I think
so some of us, think that we must give the support to the government which is elected. That feeling also may be there.
yeah, I don't think that could be the reason. But what you said is there is a truth in what you're saying. Is that there generally, as you said, people's attitudes have changed. They don't need newspapers. They're not. I mean, they don't need television channels which are critical of what they believe in, because a large part of India seems to be pro BJP or pro Hindutva kind of thing. Those people don't want their newspapers, their television channels to criticize what they believe. So I think this is what I said. It is a post-truth kind of thing. Everybody wants to listen to their own political views, or as it is called in the West, the echo chambers. They want to listen to the echo of what they say. So there seems to be a moving away from those newspapers, those television channels, which are critical of what they believe in politically or in terms of religion. So this is something, and the television channels also think that because the ratings are actually favoring those channels which are taking sides with the political party. So at a point of time, your ownership, newspaper ownership, or the television owners also would say that it is economically wise to be on that, on that line, like to side, to support a particular political organization is what makes ratings go up, which makes the because you have ratings, you have more commercial revenue. So it is politically and economically wise to be one-sided or partisan. So this has become an order. For instance, as in the US, everybody is saying that the Fox Television, everybody knows that Fox Television is completely right-wing, pro-Republican. At the same time, it makes a lot of money. In in India also, the Republic channel is number one in terms of revenue, in terms of rating. So after a stage, the market has its own sort of logic, says that you have to market. If you are part, it is good to be partisan. If it is economically good to be partisan, the economic interests of the private ownership of television channels and newspaper also might think on those lines. There was
No,
a time in
Here,
Sabrimala, for instance, I'll give you an
my
example. In
question is,
Sabrimala, when the Sabrimala thing happened,
there's one channel
everybody was gradually going into one particular direction. Because if you are going to be critical of the Sabrimala agitation, there was a huge sort of reaction to being honest or being balanced or being independent. We took a decision to be independent, to let our television channel, voice all the sides. But the kind of opposition, the kind of protest that we had for a long time from a large section of community, large section of market or community, was so strong that it was absolutely difficult to be independent, balanced, or fair.
but then there is a contradiction here. BJP does not have the kind of support it has in the north. So we are also religiously oriented and ready to accept, the idea of worshipping or following a particular line. How is it that our Hindus are not with BJP?
Well, I think that it's low. Politically, they still remain with the Congress or with the left or something like that. But at least large sections of Hindus are, internally moving into a Hindutva mindset. This is something which is very scary. People whom I have known, or you might have known for a long time, to be very, very secular, or people who may be religious, but at the same time, they would think that religion is their private thing. They don't want their political ideas to be colored by their religious beliefs. But that is something of the past. The last 20, 25 years, what you see, even in Kerala, is that people, not just Hindus, every religious community is getting more and more religious, more and more sort of, inward looking, and, they are more sort of attached to their own religions. The other side of it is that you slowly start disliking before you start hating the other religion. This has happened in Kerala also. So many people, if you get into the family groups, immediately in the WhatsApp family groups, what you see is the dominant voice is, what is happening to our religion? Why are these people are doing such a bad thing to our religion, to our caste? So this identity politics has gone much deeper than we think, even in Kerala society.
No, that's what I was pointing out. That should have meant that they might go for a Hindutva-oriented party, which they have not gone. So, how do you explain that?
It hasn't happened as yet.
But you suspect it will happen
for various reasons. But I think that is what I said. Politically, they are still with the other parties, but internally, those people are slowly moving into the other mold. So this is something
we are looking at it from a journalism perspective so far. But how about human freedom itself? Is there, there are all these stories about people being arrested for criticizing somebody or saying something, etc. Has that increased in your 40 years of experience? Has that increased?
Absolutely.
We used to hear about communal riots during Mrs. Gandhi's days also.
Yes.
So what is the difference?
Sorry, can you come again? I didn't get you exact. I didn't get the point.
I'm saying that communal riots, communal conflicts, the word communal riots and communal conflicts were very common during Mrs. Gandhi's time or even Panditji's time. Okay. But now when you talk about communalism, we say it in a different way. It is extremist and they are doing. But is there a big difference in that, in those two?
Yes, I think there's a huge difference, because at that time you have the physical communal rights almost on a safe kind, as especially in North India and all. But people have not been, the kind of communal virus that you see right now internally in their minds, in their thinking, in their ways of being. Maybe there is physical clashes, physical communal clashes are, that was there even in those days. Even now you have. But people thinking on communal lines, on religious lines, on identity lines have never been this bad in the past.
They have become more extremist, do you think?
More extremist internally. Maybe they wouldn't indulge in physical clashes instantaneously, but at the same time, entire thinking process has been colored by their identities, the so-called identities, who you are, what is the caste you've been. It is very clear. It is very obvious. It has happened in every religion. This is also a very common thing. If such a thing happens in one particular religion, you seem to see that growing across religions. The kind of, when we were in college or we were young, it was absolutely it was absolutely small town or extremely, people used to call you country if you have a sandal paste on your forehead, if you had religious, symbols like that, and especially youngsters. But you see it. But what is happening right now is that it is just the reverse. It is very fashionable to flaunt your religious motives. This happens in every religion. The names have changed. Christian name, for instance, Christianity, in Christian religion, it was fashionable, it was modern, it was secular for Christian religions, Christian people to have names which are secular, which are non-Christian names, which is very fashionable. But right now, you see a reverse in that community. I'm not saying something has happened completely changed, but this is something which is very much visible. And this is the same thing you can see in Muslims, you can see among Hindus. You have this, going back to the caste surnames. You have even small kids having their surnames very much there, very strongly. You have very 2-year baby, which is, you have the Menon surname, the Nayars there, Pillais are there. The same
They're all
thing.
coming back. You and I don't have surnames.
Exactly. We belong to a generation which, when it was fashionable to shed your surnames,
Right.
but it is just the other way around. And it has happened not in Hindu community alone. That is why I said it is across. But in India, because Hindus are the majority community, it is this particular identity kind of, going back to this identity, which is much more scary than, in other communities.
Well, talking about other countries, it is basically the West which creates these ratings and definitions and so on. So in the last few years, we are seeing them increasingly saying that India is not a democracy; it is doing this and that. And there, they are not talking about television shows or views expressed by people. They are talking in terms of the so-called human rights violations. The Amnesty International. They always raised all these issues, even in the past. Also, Mrs. Gandhi threw Amnesty International out of the country. But today,
and now Modi also has done this.
Yes, I know. So
Akar Patel cannot go out of the country because he's the amnesty chief here.
no, so so this freedom index comes out of their assessments that individuals are not suffering, are suffering more and more. Could it be the reason that it all get covered more on Indian television? Because sometimes I asked one of our chief ministers, why so much of corruption? Why so much of law and order situation? He said, no, this is all doing of television. A few years ago, all this existed, but we didn't know about it. Nobody reported it. But now everybody is reporting, everybody is counting how much liquor people are consuming, 23 crores one night. So this gives the impression that we have deteriorated, but we have not deteriorated. Is there any truth in that?
Yeah, that could be true to a large extent, because there are certain scholars who actually have done a documented history of the negative things that have happened 25 years back, comparing that to what is happening right now. Stephen Pinker, for instance, he has come out with the theory that in terms of everything, everybody is thinking that it is today the present is so bad. We have this war, you have this hate mongering and all. But if you take the actual number of people being killed, the genocides, the religious sort of clashes and all those things, you definitely come to a conclusion where things are better now than the past. So, but I don't subscribe completely to the Stephen Pinker view that things have been pretty absolutely better than about 15 years ago, 50 years ago. You don't have world wars. You don't have wars, for instance. But until Falklands, as you know, you know it better than me, that at least 2-3 years you have this wars. Now these are we have gone past all those things. But at the same time, this point also is right, because people always used to say that why everybody you see all these bad things on television, son killing the mother, father killing son, wife beating the son, husband doing that.
Not the news channels, but the serial channels.
Yeah, not even serials, but even news. It's actually the facts have taken over the fiction now. The kind of murders that you see every day, people are actually using pythons to kill their wives and all those kind of things. So
some people say now the news channels are more interesting than fiction.
Exactly. People used to say that this is how the sometime back you have this Ma publications, the kind of Pingli publications of Kerala. So after television channels came, they all disappeared. We thought in the 1980s, there were huge protests by the communist parties against MAP, people's sensibilities being trivialized. There was so much of tabloidization and things like that. Suddenly, television came and Malayalam Manorama and Mangalam's circulations crashed like anything. Now we have come to a situation where television serial watchers are actually switching over to television news channels, news channel watching, because the kind of entertainment, the crime stories.
Fact being stranger than fiction.
Yeah, facts are stranger than fiction, and it is full of criminal stories and crime stories. But as you said, I would definitely say that these kinds of crimes have always been there. Not we don't have a kind of exact sort of scales to say that that was it was so less then, it was so high now. But as you said, the kind of saturation of media, the kind of presence, the phenomenal presence of television media or the print picks up every small thing that is happening in any nook and corner of this world. So whatever happens in some particular point, a particular corner, gets highly flashed, it completely amplified by television channels, and people have an impression that things have gone so bad these days. Crimes have gone up like anything. If you read your epics and your Ramayanas and Puranas, the kind of crimes committed, the kind of horrible crimes that were committed was no less those days. But now you get reported. So it's because of high level of reporting, large scale of reporting, that you have an impression that this world is full of crimes to large extent. So all these are right. The media's presence and as you said, this is very important. But at the same time, doesn't mean that the media is doing, maybe some kind of exaggeration is there, maybe some kind of over amplification there. If you get a case like PC George, for instance, every day, right from morning until evening.
Yes, how is it important? How is that important? For whom?
That is why I said.
How is traveling from Cochin to Thiruvananthapuram? All the channels follow him.
Absolutely. They follow him like anything. Not just if you take the other cases also, the gold case or the Sarida case. So the television, the news channel is so vibrant, hyperactive. It is hyper journalism's time now. When there is hyper journalism, everything gets much more than that what it is. So there is an impression that this is what is happening in Kerala. Nothing happens because, when this gold case, this thing was. Some people from North India was actually calling up and saying, "What is this? You have nothing else happening in there. Just this gold smuggling case. Your television channels are completely covering it 24 hours about this particular girl, particular woman who was there in the gold case." And as if Kerala is full of this kind of vamps. Sarita was there in 2 years, 5 years back, some 6 years back. Now you have the other Swapna is there. As if Kerala is full of these kinds of stories. Nothing else.
World history is full of MS fatales, no? Women.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have our share, but this is nothing new at all. Anyway, coming to your personal career as a journalist, you belong to a prominent leftist family. M.N. Govindan is on your wall, and your father is an ideologue, and he determined the policies of the leftist movement, Marxism, Leninism, etc., and of course, communism in Kerala. And you remained an independent journalist throughout, did you? And how did you manage that? This did not impel particular compulsions on you?
Not at all. Thanks again to the enlightened communists of my family. The elders were actually quite independent, quite democratic in those things. Because as you said, I've born and brought up in a family which is full of communists, of the left, right, of the left communists, of the right communists, and some the extreme communists also. But I had decided right from my from my young days that I'm going to I'll be going into journalism, and it will be completely an objective journalism. The communist relatives of mine have called me a bourgeois journalist, but I was happy with it. There was no problem for that, because the credit goes to them that even when I was in Mathrubhumi, I started my career with a small economic magazine in Bombay, because that was the time in 1980s. Early 1980s was actually the earliest years of economic liberalization in India, when Indira Gandhi kind of opened it up.
Yes, nationalization.
Yeah, that kind of initial thing. And that was the time when economic journalism was coming of age. In Kerala, in India, this kind of pink journalism was actually starting its first
Economic Times.
steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my master's was in economics. So economics was my topic, and I wanted to be a journalist. So the best option was to be an economic journalist for various reasons. Because as I said, because it was a time of pink journalism, and suddenly a new caste hierarchy was building up in the world of journalism, and the economic journalists were the Brahmins of that time. So it was the best thing to be a person who has a background in economics and wanted to be a journalist. The best option was to be an economic journalist. So I went to Bombay, especially because my relative, the famous story writer, Mr. M.P. Narayana Pillai, was the editor of a magazine called Minerals and Metals Review in Bombay. So he was a complete literati. He was in literature full time, but he was actually making his living from doing some kind of economic journalism in Bombay. So I went to Bombay after my masters and joined his magazine. But I have one big problem is that I have a big addiction to Trivandrum. So I just wanted to come back to Trivandrum after 2 years. Even Bombay, I didn't want journalists. I didn't want Bombay at all. So in 2 years' time, when I came back to Trivandrum at that time, the Malayalam Madhubhumi newspaper was just starting in Trivandrum. It was so I applied. They have a trainee journalist scheme. You have to write a test, and you get. So I got selected in Madhubhumi. So from that point onwards, 12 years in Madhubhumi, then 20 years in India Today. So all through my life, this kind of independent journalism was
sustainable. It was sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely sustainable. Mainly because, as you said, my father, in spite of his completely political person, but at the same time, he never forced me to do anything at all. Even when I went to, in my college days also, I was not into the student politics, not because I had any, contempt for that, because I was interested in so many other things. Because I knew that, if you're going to student politics, your time will be completely taken up for that. And so I was into cricket, I was into cinema, I was into coffee house, doing nothing and idling away my time. And, I enjoyed all those things. So being that kind of a person, I was not fit to be. And secondly, I am a person who, I have my differences with all the organizations. I couldn't be a completely loyal party man in anywhere, be it the student movement, student organization. So that streak has always been there. Maybe from my mother. My mother was never, she was a teacher. She was never into political things, but she had a general political idea, political perspective. But she or I could never be completely, subscribe to sort of one particular political view or one particular political party's position.
But do you regret it now? If you had done it differently, you would have been a minister today, like your brother-in-law.
That is right, but at the cost of so many other things, so many things that I wanted to do. All those things I did because I could sort of devote my time to all those things, and so I enjoyed my past. And then from Madhubhumi 20 years in India. So even when I was living with my parents in my early years in Madhubhumi and all, my parents, my father was there, and my uncle, for instance, P.K. Vasudevanar, used to stay in my house in Trivandrum. So all these people were very definite, strong political position. And when I was working in Madhubhumi, I used to come back to my home after my job, after doing so many critical stories about the left, and came back and had dinner with my political relatives.
Nobody denied you dinner. Nobody denied you dinner when you came back. That's nice. But of course, what political life lost, I think journalism gained, if I may say so, because I think you have done a better job, better service to the country.
But as I said, the credit goes to them. Everything goes to them. They were so magnanimous. They were so broad-minded to let me go. As Arundhati Roy's mother, Arundhati Roy has written in her lot of small things. She's actually saying that God of small things. She's actually saying that thank you, mother, for letting me go. So I think I would thank my political elders for letting me go.
But most of the leaders of today, I don't want to name anybody, may have seen you as a little boy, sitting in their lap or talking to them, etc., etc. Don't they expect some kind of special affinity that you should have for them? Do they expect that? Do they not try it on you?
yeah, some people must have tried in my early days. Now I'm almost on the same age level with some of the top leaders of the party or the party organization. They wouldn't think that. In fact, EMS, for instance, when I joined Madhubhumi, at AKG Center, I came across, I bumped into EMS during those days, and my father also was there. And my father actually told EMS that this he has joined Madhubhumi. And jokingly he said it's the bourgeois journalism EM, and EMS said absolutely no problem. He said these. I don't think that people of this particular generation should go into any particular partisan journalism. Those people who are completely partisan should go, but these people who have it is the political, being political is not being a political person of a particular political party. It is actually your sort of loyalty to certain values. I would like him to work in a non-party paper, but I am sure that
Integrity.
he must have imbibed the kind of the values that you actually taught him. So I think it is good. So it is in a way it is good that these people with this kind of background go into sort of the non-party journalism, so that non-party journalism would be better. So that was the comment that EMS actually made. So those were the days. So they didn't. I don't think that they actually expected, me to sort of support them in their. But that is not the case right now. Even though, as you said, some of the whenever you have, you mention something, even if you are not directly responsible for whatever everything that the television says, but whenever there is a critical reference to a political party, especially the left party, the kind of sort of hostility that you see within the left against you is so phenomenal. So you're actually it doesn't happen with the other parties. So that is there right now.
That's what I mean. They expect you to be more friendly or more tolerant.
That's right. That is right. But even after all these years, you said in the 40 years in journalism, they still expect me to be supportive of them. I wouldn't say that's the right thing to do.
Right. But now are you going to write more? Are you going to be writing more?
That's right. From September, from last September, when I actually left my editor's job, I started writing certain columns. I have a weekly column in the Madhubhumi English edition, online edition, and I am writing a monthly column for the Telegraph that comes from Calcutta. So my company has been kind enough to let me do those columns, and so I'm doing that, and we are doing some serious kind of documentary kind of thing. I've been involved with. I've been so for the last 1 year we have been working around a project, a documentary project on, and I've been traveling for that to North India and all. So larger, I think this particular position helps me to go a bit deeper into sort of journalism instead of the daily instantaneous journalism. You can actually getting into the long form kind of journalism, as you call in the print.
Because many journalists who are with long experience try now to not be a journalist, more of an analyst or a commentator.
That's right.
And a senior journalist whom you and I know told me, please don't call me a journalist. When I invited to this program, I said, this journalist. He said, don't call me a journalist because it is an abuse these days. So he said, call me political commentator. So are you graduating into that process?
No, I have always been doing that. I have been most of the time except for the first 12 years in Madhubhumi, daily journalism. Rest of my life, I've been in magazine journalism, which is actually a more nuanced and more a deeper kind of analytical kind of journalism. For the 20 years I was in India Today, I was actually, it's a political commentary or a social commentator's job that I was doing. So this is something which I like more. Even in television also, because when I've been as a social and political commentator's role that I was doing in television also. And after having joined the Asianet News Channel as its editor, what I concentrated on was to bring out certain, a longer version of history, a longer, political. What is the history of Kerala? What is the political history of Kerala's last 60 years? What is the history of Malayalam literature? For instance, that was very new, extremely exciting kind of project that we did called Vakabukungalam. In fact, television is supposed to be the enemy of literature because it is a visual thing and it is the other thing is a print word. But what we tried to do was to celebrate Malayalam literature through television, and we did how Kerala changed in the last 25 years. So this was actually getting the sort of the deeper side of journalism, the deeper version of journalism. So what I tried to do was I was trying to push the envelope in that on that line throughout my television career also. So this is exactly what I am trying right now also. In this present position also, we are planning to have some serious top class documentaries on various topics. So I think journalism is a multi-hued kind of phenomenon. You cannot dismiss it as just a low-level kind of thing. There are possibilities, and to explore those possibilities within journalism, in spite of all the pressures and challenges, is what I'm.
And finally, how have you coped with the technological challenges? Because you know the famous statement by Yuval Harari saying that some of our thinkers, some of our great writers, they'll all become worthless because what they are doing now will be done by machines tomorrow. Even the White House will one day be occupied by a robot rather than a person, and therefore people will become redundant if you don't cope with technology. Because you cannot make it, as he said, you cannot make it truck driver into a computer specialist. You cannot do that. So they have to leave the scene, as it were. But have you managed to hold on to the technological advantages?
Well, this has been a very interesting, exciting, as well as very, very difficult kind of challenge that I have encountered throughout my life. I have switched, forms throughout my career because I started with a small magazine journalism and then I changed to daily journalism, which itself is a technologically with a completely different kind of offer. Not that only today you have these technological challenges. From the small magazine kind of thing, to the daily producing newspaper was another major thing because you have to bring out news in 24 hours time. At that particular point of time was difficult, and from there I shifted to India Today magazine kind of thing. The market was different, the national market. The language was different. From Madhubhumi I came to English journalism, and from 20 years of print journalism I came to television journalism. Again, that was a technological sort of leap. So you have to be, So, but in spite of all these technological changes, what remains in the core is something which has not changed at all.
Journalism, no machine can deal.
Yeah, absolutely. The core of journalism, to be sort of, to hold the powers, to speak truth, to be fair, to take to take every side of a particular argument. These are the fundamental things. So if you have technology, people who are savvy in technology, people are, after coming to television, even in television also the last 20 years I've seen big changes in terms of technology. The people who are started in television actually don't know what they are doing right now because the technology has changed completely. So you have the support of a thing. All that you needed was a mindset, a welcoming mindset, an open mindset to receive whatever being taught by people who are in the know. I think those youngsters who were quite at home with these technologies told me that this is the way it should be done. So I went along with that.
So analogy is diplomatic profession, for example. All my life I was struggling to get the news to the Ministry of External Affairs. Now, right. Ministry of External Affairs will tell you the news. They are reading the same newspapers, same channels. So at one moment, I thought we have become redundant. Why do you need an ambassador when Mr. Modi can bring up President Biden one morning, and I would not even know what he has told President Biden, and he would be working on something which is entirely different. But then I realized that that is not it. It is not reaching the information to people, but make that informed information which would be helpful for to analyze in Delhi what we are able to do in Washington or New York. And so, so I call myself now not ambassador plenipotentiary and extraordinary like in the old days. I say we are Sherpas.
Absolutely.
Sherpas perform a perfect job. Hillary would never have gone onto the mountain without tensing. And so now it's becoming actually a designation in the diplomatic field. The top diplomats are all Sherpas. And you prepare everything up to the ground, and then the summiteers will come and take all the glory. So
Absolutely.
This must have affected every profession. That's why I was curious about knowing about your own approach to technology.
Absolutely.
Well, Anjar, thank you very much for spending a full hour with me. It has been a great pleasure. And I'm sure our viewers have benefited because they don't get you to talk about such things too often. And now you have your own choice. You are not forced because you are an editor to say something. And therefore, I'm so glad that you agreed to engage.
Thanks, TPS. It's confusing times. I don't know whether we have actually confounded the confusion of viewers.
Let's hope. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.